For my article summary, I did an article titled Coach's Experience of Job Crafting Through Organizational Change in High Performance Sport. And so basically this study is about how coaches in professional sports of varying levels, but all professional, kind of use job crafting to find a little more like worth in the job that they're doing. So the article starts by describing the aspect of organizational change within sport organizations. They talk about how every sport organization is kind of trying to find their own way to win and provide for the stakeholders, whether that be the people who have actually invested in the team or the people who are fans and all that. And so because of this, they're obviously always going through change, and whether that involves the coaches or not, whether it be from cutting or adding players to different coaching styles to things that they're trying to do for the fans to make it more enjoyable for them and all like that. It's a lot of organizational change that can happen in these organizations, and that can put a lot of stress on coaches and lead to a lot of negative things like early turnover, burnout, and things such as that. So then we start talking about how job crafting is used to kind of make this better for them. So they describe job crafting as making physical and mental changes to one's job task demands and the resources available to them to support their individual needs in undertaking the job role. And they call on a couple different theories of job crafting because it is a very popular term. The first one, Theory of Job Crafting by Wiercinski and Dutton in 2001, talks about how there's multiple forms of job crafting. There's task crafting, which is what you do and don't do at work. Relationship crafting, which is basically who you do or don't talk to at work. And cognitive crafting, which is basically just how you approach your job mentally, whether you like it or not. And the second is a theory that kind of just builds on the model of burnout and how job crafting works with that. So in this study, they used a qualitative research method. So what they did is they anonymously gathered a couple coaches from multiple different sports in the UK, and they interviewed them, asking them questions. At first, they asked them questions about background questions were developed to simulate discussion with the coaches about their experiences with the organizations they work with and the organizational change within that. Second, they asked some questions about the nature of the organizational change in their respective sport and just like workplace settings. And they probed the coaches on their lived-in experiences. So in this study, they used IPA, which is interpretive phenomenological analysis, to really to explore the lived-in experience of the coaches and how they sense, so that the real details of their sports can help this study. And so third, they got into job crafting and how they've used it in their work psychology. Just like, how have you done job crafting? Maybe some of them didn't know about it, and just like they kind of brought that to their eyes. And then finally, they kind of just did like a broad question, like how would you summarize your views of organizational change and how job crafting has helped you make better sense of your job and feel more fulfilled by your job? And in this study, they kind of found, it's like a qualitative research study, so that's in the paper. It shows to talk about a lot of quotes from these people, but they kind of comes with two superordinate and subordinate themes. And those subordinate themes are the climate of the organizational change and then crafting the job. And then there's a bunch of subordinate themes that like kind of tie into that, like job turnover, how some of these coaches feel like they're working in a vacuum, and the withdrawal from aspects of the job. So they have multiple quotes from players, from some of the coaches in here that they gave some names to. One said a lot of them felt like they were working in a vacuum and that none of their work was being really valued, and they just the environment was characterized by poor leadership, and the team kind of operated without consultation. So anything they really suggested to try and do better was just kind of pushed to the side, and that kind of robbed them of some sense but like made them feel like they weren't really welcomed, or their opinions weren't welcomed as they were hired. And then they kind of go in to talk about job crafting. An essential part of any attempts the coaches made to shape their role was their motives. So basically, why do you need to change your job? Why do you need to change your job role, and so on. So they go on to give a bunch of other quotes from these same coaches about how they use job crafting. I have one right here that said, I have definitely had to compromise my own values and beliefs several times, and I express those with people in the organization. But with the same point, if you're working for an organization and you're employed or contracted to do work for them, then by signing the contract, you're agreeing to the philosophy, ethos, values, and beliefs. So you're almost a shining beacon for that organization. You can't then go against them and apply your own personal values. So basically that ties into their motives. Like, they did sign on to do this job, and then they kind of use job crafting to do the things that the team asked them, but within what they actually want to do and makes them most fulfilled. Article goes on to give a bunch of other quotes like that, just talking about these coaches' experience with job crafting. And then at the end, it gives a kind of discussion on what can be done and how this study is really valuable, and there should be more studies on this and how job crafting is personalized. This was the first study of their kind to the author's knowledge, and it's kind of like a something that can be more dug into, like there's more to find out. And at the end, they conclude by outlining some recommendations on how job crafting may be optimized to improve the well-being and performance of these elite sport workers in context. So one of the things that I know is very common in working in sports is a lot of burnout, because they do ask a lot of questions. They do ask a lot of you, and sometimes for little in return, whether that be pay, appreciation, or things like that. And that's something that I just know from my personal experience of working in sports. But they give a lot of things about how recommendations on how the organizations themselves can kind of encourage their employees to do some job crafting to find what gives them the most meaning to make them happier in work. Because really that's what this study is looking to figure out, is how can employees in these sport organizations be more fulfilled by what they're doing? And that's what they're trying to tackle. And they think the article did a really good job of that. And it definitely highlights an area of research that can be done more into, maybe not even in the sport world, but just in the experience of job crafting in all other areas of work.